Blog Talk Radio.
Are you ready to take a bite out of the competition? Are you looking for ideas to make your business better? Welcome to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet,
sponsored by Apple Capital Group.
At the core of every successful business, you'll find people making a difference. And with each episode of the Core Business Show, we talk with those people, examine those ideas, and explore the strategies that make them special. Now, the host of the Core Business Show, Tim Jacquet.
Good morning and welcome to the Core Business Show. I'm Tim Jacquet, your host. We're going to go ahead and continue our series on power of selling.
You're now going to hear about one terrific saleswoman, Billy Engman, the master of a close called The Accessory. Zig also explains some more traits of great salespeople.
The high-performing sales professionals are total, well-balanced people with integrity who are knowledgeable and aggressively caring in their creative approach to solving problems. Now, I want you to notice one thing. The second thing about this professional is he is a team player with integrity. One of the most exciting stories that I think I've ever heard has to do with an incident that took place on a railroad a number of years ago. It's a hot August day. The sun is beaming down. There's a work crew out doing some repair work on the railroad. They're next to a siding. Now, all of a sudden, a train approaches and pulls off on the adjoining track. And a window comes up, and a loud voice calls out to the work crew, Dave! Dave Anderson, is that you? And the work crew chief shouted back, Yeah, Jim, it is. Jim Murphy said, Why don't you come on in? Let's talk a while. Well, old Dave was delighted to get out of that hot sun. He went into this fancy, air-conditioned, luxury, private car there on the railroad and visited with Jim Murphy for the better part of an hour. At the end of the hour, he made his departure, and as he walked back to his crew, the crew looked at him in amazement and said, Dave, why, that was Jim Murphy. Dave said, Yes, sure it was. They said, but Jim Murphy is the president of the railroad. And Dave said, well, nobody knows that better than I do. And the guy said, well, how in the world did you get to be such good buddies with Jim Murphy, the president of this railroad? Dave said, well, it's very simple. When I went to work over 20 years ago with this railroad, Jim Murphy went to work the same day. We've been friends ever since. And they said, well, Dave, now we're puzzled. Over 20 years ago, you both went to work on the same day, and he's now the president of the railroad, and you're still out here working in the hot sun. Why is that? And Dave Anderson looked at him and softly and obviously pretty sadly said, a little over 20 years ago, Jim Murphy went to work for the railroad. I went to work for $1.75 an hour. The mark of the professional is that he or she are vitally interested in the success of their company, in the growth of their company, in the growth of the people who are around them, in the well-being of their customers. The professional is a person who is interested in selling today so that they can sell more tomorrow. The professional is a person who is consistent in his life, his personal life, his family life, and his business life. A number of years ago, when we first moved to Dallas, I was the vice president in charge of training for a company in Dallas, and we hired a new middle manager. He'd been with us about 3 days when he and I got out on the golf course. I came back after the golf game, and I said to the president of the company, he won't be with us more than 3 months maximum. He said, why not? And I said, he cheats in golf. Any man who will cheat in golf will cheat anywhere. Now, it is one thing on occasion to miss counting a stroke, maybe one time on rare events, particularly if you're about a 61 handicapper or something like that. But when you're a reasonably good golfer, you don't miss counting 5 strokes in one 9-hole golf game. You just don't do it. I said, this guy will be gone within 3 months. It was less than 3 weeks before he made his departure. Your business life, your professional life, your personal life have all got to be consistent if you're going to be a successful career builder in selling. The professional thinks in terms of service, but he also thinks in terms of his ability to make the sale on a specific call. He expects to make the sale. The professional has a good sense of humor. He takes his profession and his prospects seriously, but not himself. He clearly understands that school is never out for the pro. He studies his prospects. He studies his company. He studies his literature. He studies human nature. He knows that if he is going to change his status in life, he must change his performance to do that. The pro understands his prospects will make their decisions based on what they understand and believe. The professional lives selling. He gets up thinking sales. He drives to work thinking sales. He has lunch thinking sales. Everywhere he goes, he is thinking sales. It is his life. It is his business. And when he gets home, he is still selling. But when he gets home, he has an entirely different sales approach. Because now he's selling his wife. He's selling his children. He's selling his family. From his heart, he must sell his children on being the best possible children. From his heart, he sells his wife on the idea that he's a good husband, or the wife sells her husband that she's a good wife. Then they demonstrate the point to make the wishes come true. In short, this professional is other people conscious. The professional is an optimist. He looks on the bright side of life. He knows that the average prospect he deals with faces enough doom and gloom in their life. He understands that he controls the buying climate, and consequently does not walk in talking about gloom and doom. When he walks to the prospect, or the prospect comes to see him, he brings good news. I know you heard about the little community that wanted to set up a pessimist club to illustrate this point, but nobody thought it would work. Now, that situation, you see, that situation prevails in too many people's lives. The professional is a thinker. He clearly understands that it is better to emulate genius than it is to create mediocrity. And so he goes to school constantly. He is career-oriented. Every action he takes is with the idea in mind of building a career rather than just making a sale. Sometimes you can make a sale and it will hurt you far more than making the sale. If you make it under the wrong conditions. The professional possesses conviction, concern, confidence, and courage. His conviction is strong that his product will solve the prospect's problem. Please remember, as I will say no less than a dozen times throughout this series, if your product will solve the prospect's problem, that prospect is even more interested in buying than you are in selling. It's a question of persuading him or her that what you've got is the solution to that problem. His concern is genuine that the prospect buy now for his own benefit. His confidence is strong that he can persuade the prospect to take action, and his courage is such that he's able to talk the prospect into taking action now. A lot of merchandise ain't bought because nobody asked the customer to buy. The professional asks for the order, and he has the courage that he's going to get the right answer. The professional is a man or woman of principle. He understands that the man or woman who won't stand for something will fall for anything. He knows if he adds one small bit to the truth, that you inevitably subtract a great deal from the truth. As time changes, the professional changes. He changes procedures and techniques, but he never changes the concepts and philosophy of delivering as much as possible, as enthusiastically as possible, at the lowest fair price. The professional knows that all the knowledge contained in the books in the Library of Congress won't work without the magic of common sense and judgment. In the final analysis, he understands that his career will depend on what he does with what he knows, not just what he knows. The professional understands that a green salesman is better than a blue one, and consequently, he continues to grow. He understands what Dr. Robert Schuller said, that spectacular achievement is always preceded by unspectacular preparation. The blood, the sweat, and the tears. Again, as an aside in my own life, many times people are complimentary about my career as a speaker. What a lot of them don't realize, as many of you have heard me say, I made over 3,000 speeches before I ever received a fee for making a one. Persistence, pure, simple, dogged persistence, is a thing that separates the people who ultimately become successful in the world of selling. I believe that the professional understands that and is willing to completely stay with it. The professional understands completely that competition is getting keener all the time, and so he must do the same thing. Several years ago when I was in Australia, I met Dr. Joseph Bracich, who is a body language expert. Dr. Bracich says if you're going to build a sales career, you got to use the recency, frequency, potency, recommendation formula if you're going to get there. Now, recency obviously means how long has it been since you were there to see your customers. As a friend, to remind them that now's the time for you to do more business. Frequency, how often do you put your name in front of that prospect or that customer to let them know that you're there to do business? How many of you recognize the name Joe Girard? Let me see your hand. Who's Joe Girard? Anybody? Car salesman. I guess everybody in the world knows that Joe Girard sold more automobiles than anybody in history. For 12 consecutive years, he was the number one automobile salesman in America. For the 15 years when he was exclusively selling cars, or primarily selling cars, today he writes books and makes speeches and does seminars and all that kind of good stuff. But for the 15 years he sold an average of 900 cars per year. The last 6 years he sold at an average of over 1,300 cars a year. And he never made fleet sales. These were always individual sales. And his company realized they profit on the sales. They were not giveaway deals. But Joe Girard undoubtedly is the best I've ever heard of at putting his name in front of the client and keeping it there. Not only does he send them a birthday card on their birthday, he sends them a birthday card on the birthday of their car. He sent them a card on Lincoln's birthday. He sent them a card on Washington's birthday, on the 4th of July, on the 23rd day of August, as an example, just because it happened to be the 23rd day of August. One card every month to every customer he has ever sold gets a card from Joe Girard. He soon is recognized simply as a member of the family. He is a friend. He is a trusted individual that they are going to buy their next car from. That's the reason, my friends, that he was number one in automobile sales in America for 12 consecutive years. That's the reason for the last 6 years he averaged over 1,300 cars per year in individual sales. His name was always there. If you're going to build a career in the world of selling, you cannot sell it all yourself. You got to have lots of help. Joe had lots of help. Who helped him? Why, every member of every family, their friends, their neighbors, their relatives, they were all out bird dogging and selling for him. You as a salesperson must do that. Frequency is extremely important. My good friend Mike Frank, who was so helpful in writing the book, Making Suggestions and Corrections, writes 7 personal handwritten notes every day of his life, and has been doing it for many, many years to the people he's been talking with that day. And he sends it on a little card which has his picture on it. Many times his contact is a short contact of 10 minutes, and he's going to see him again. Then he made an appointment, he's going to see him again in 2 months. They might well have forgotten what he looked like. And so Mike sits down that night and sends them a little card with his picture on it so they will have that there. Is it a lot of trouble? You bet it is. Is it time consuming? Of course it is. Is it worth it? Absolutely, there's no question about it. The next part of that is the potency formula. How strong was the impact? What kind of a relationship did you build when you made the sale this last time? If it was a recommendation and you're in there because of a brother-in-law routine or because of a political connection, they might have bought one time from you simply to pay a debt to a friend. But my friend, recommendations are tremendously important, but you're not going to build a career with that individual just because you sold them the one time on that recommendation. You have got to go back and see them. How strong was the impact? Recommendation, of course, is tremendously important. And when I get into the sale in just a few minutes of how I bought an automobile from a man named Chuck Bellis, I bought it entirely because of the recommendation. So yes, recommendation is tremendously important. I repeat, you'll never build an outstanding career on your efforts alone. You got to have these other people selling for you. Now I'm going to close this simply by saying that the professional is skilled at communicating and reading the prospect's communications back to him. You communicate with your body language.
You're listening to the Core Business Show, sponsored by Apple Capital Group. Apple Capital Group in Jacksonville, Florida, is a commercial lender that specializes in asset-based loans, equipment leasing and financing, invoice financing, commercial real estate loans, and asset-based financing in the U.S. and Canada. Apple Capital Group is a direct lender that lends on their private equity investment portfolio. 90% of most loans are decided within 2 hours, and vendor funding within 24 hours after documents are completed, with a one-page application. No slow no's, just a quick decision and a fast yes. To get more information about lending from Apple Capital Group, call 866-611-7457. That's 866-611-7457 to speak with one of our loan specialists. Or visit us right now at applecapitalgroup.com. Thank you for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet. For a free quote on equipment leasing and financing, visit our website, applecapitalgroup.com. That's applecapitalgroup.com. And fill out the information to receive your free quote. We hope you'll join us for our next episode. And remember, you can always get to the Core via iTunes. You'll find all our previous episodes there. Thanks again for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet.